Also, welcome to a few new members who are here in replacement to a few others that are not able to be here today, but thank you. We do have our witnesses before us. I know we have a number of motions that we wish to address. I've spoken to the vice chair, so we're going to sort of save a little part of the tail end of our meeting to try to manage through the motions. There's also other business I want to relate to in regards to some travel that's coming forward and some other issues that have taken place in a short while that I think you should all be aware of. So pursuant to Standing Orders 108-2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, September 16, 2025, the committee is meeting to resume its consideration of the nexus between national defense, national security, and the critical minerals sector. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format. Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person and remotely using Zoom application. Before we continue, I ask participants to consult the guidelines on the table. These measures are to help prevent audio and feedback incidences and to protect the health and safety of our interpreters. I'd like to remind the witnesses and the members to please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand, and for those on Zoom, use the hand raise function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. And for interpretation, please use your earpiece, and if you're on Zoom, use the respective channel. Again, all comments should be addressed through the chair. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. Hudson Lester, General Manager of Nunavut, Northwest Territories and Nunavut Chamber of Mines. He's joining us via video conferencing. Is that correct? Is he on?
Yes.
Gaulin. Jeff, I have a tendency of not getting names correct in this committee, but he's the Vice President of Corporate Affairs of Vale Base Metals. Photinie Koutsavlis, something to that effect. She's a Vice President of Economic Affairs and Climate Change and Mining Association of Canada. My apologies as well. And Michael Gullo, maybe, Vice President, Policy, Business Council of Canada. I do apologize, but you'll please repeat your names when you speak. That way we all have an idea who you are. And I'll proceed with the witnesses' opening statements. You have up to 5 minutes. And Mr. Lester, why don't we start with you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, coming from Iqaluit Nunavut, speaking on behalf of the Chamber of Mines today, from a chamber perspective, Canada's critical mineral strategy aligns with Arctic sovereignty and defense readiness. The same infrastructure that enables mining, ports, roads, power systems, air access, and communication is what allows Canada to operate securely in the north. Energy security in Nunavut is national security. The Chamber supports responsible investment, but in critical minerals, Canada must look beyond simple ownership to long-term control through off-take agreements, financing structures, and logistics. And if Canada wants to be a reliable supplier to our allies, including NATO, northern projects must be supported by year-round infrastructure and domestic or allied processing capacity. Trusted ally collaboration should strengthen Canadian sovereignty, Inuit partnerships, and northern capacity, not shift strategic leverage offshore. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my opening.
Lester. Please, over to you, and state your name properly. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Photinie Koutsavlis, and I'm from the Mining Association of Canada. So, members of the committee, thank you so much for the invitation to appear before you today. Canada produces critical minerals for a wide range of purposes that underpin both our economy and our national security. These materials are foundational to energy systems, transportation, advanced manufacturing, digital infrastructure, clean technologies, and defense and security-related applications. Canada produces more than 60 minerals and metals and is a top global producer of uranium, potash, nickel, aluminum, palladium, and gold, with world-class potential in copper, graphite, lithium, rare earth elements, tungsten, and niobium. The mining sector is already a major economic pillar. It contributed approximately $117 billion to GDP in 2023, generated $151 billion in exports, and directly and indirectly employs more than 700,000 Canadians. We also remain the country's largest private sector employer of Indigenous peoples by proportional basis. Canadian capital markets list roughly 40% of the world's mining companies, making Canada a global hub for mining finance and expertise. This scale matters because critical minerals are not a niche issue. They are central to economic resilience, industrial competitiveness, and national security. The challenge Canada faces is not a lack of critical mineral resources. It is a concentration risk and an execution risk. Globally, supply chains for many critical minerals remain highly concentrated, particularly in processing and refining. China controls roughly 85 to 90% of global rare earth refining and magnet production, and has expanded export controls and licensing requirements across a growing list of critical minerals. These trends create real vulnerabilities for advanced economies and have sharpened the focus on secure, diversified supply from trusted jurisdictions, reinforcing the importance of strengthening Canada's defence industrial base and its ability to support allied requirements through secure domestic supply chains. Canada is well positioned to respond, but production and processing trends highlight the need for action. Despite the breadth of Canada's mineral endowment, production of several key commodities critical to defence and advanced manufacturing has declined over the past decade, including copper, down roughly 20%, and nickel, down more than 30%. At the same time, Canada has lost multiple smelting and refining facilities, and despite operating processing facilities across 8 provinces, refined output for several key metals is lower than a decade ago, reducing domestic feedstock availability. This matters because many defense-related critical minerals are recovered through smelting and refining processes, often as co-products rather than produced directly at the mine. Budget 2025 represents the most significant effort to date to reverse these trends. It introduces key tools to unlock investment, including the $2 billion Critical Minerals Sovereign Fund, the First and Last Mile Fund, expanded exploration tax credits, and changes to the Clean Technology Manufacturing Investment Tax Credit that better reflects Canada's polymetallic geology and support near-term copper projects, alongside funding to support critical minerals processing, allied investment, and development of a stockpiling mechanism. Budget 2025 also supports dual-use infrastructure in northern remote regions, strengthening logistics and supply chains that serve both economic and security objectives. Key design and implementation issues do remain. For example, the investment tax credit is of minimal value to brownfield expansions because qualifying expenses are much reduced at an existing mine site. Including underground development and other Canadian development expenses would be one of the most effective ways to boost near-term output, as these projects already have permits, community and Indigenous support, and existing infrastructure, reducing cost and risk. Sudbury is a good example of this, and MP Lapointe will be very familiar with that reality. At the same time, stronger support for earlier stages of the mining cycle is needed to prevent promising discoveries from becoming orphan projects. Expanding the Canadian exploration expense to cover technical and feasibility studies would help de-risk early-stage projects and strengthen the pipeline of future mines, as these studies are essential, costly, and often a barrier to advancing otherwise viable projects. Secure access to critical minerals is ultimately a national security issue, and it depends not just on stockpiling, but on sustained production, processing capacity, infrastructure, and trusted partnerships over time. International cooperation can add real value when it helps reduce concentration risks and bring projects into production. The G7 Critical Minerals Production Alliance holds significant promise and is already moving from concept to execution. Through Canada's G7 presidency, the Alliance has begun operationalizing projects by coordinating public and private capital, securing offtake arrangements, and reducing concentration risks across trusted partners. In closing, delivery will determine success. Programs must operate at the speed of business, permitting timelines must continue to improve, and companies need clarity and predictability to support multi-decade investments. International initiatives can reinforce this effort, but they cannot substitute for effective domestic policy and program implementation. The priority now is execution, implementing Budget 2025 measures quickly, accelerating project approvals, strengthening infrastructure, and translating policy intent into real production. If Canada gets this right, it can strengthen economic resilience and support national security objectives. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gullo, why don't we go to you for 5 minutes?
It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. As the chair has pointed out, my name is Michael Gullo. You got that right. And I'm the Vice President of Policy at the Business Council of Canada. And the Business Council of Canada is composed of 170 chief executives and entrepreneurs of Canada's leading enterprises. Founded in 1976, our mandate is to make Canada the best country in the world in which to live, work, invest, and grow. Before I table my remarks, I would like to congratulate the federal government on tabling its inaugural Defense Industrial Strategy. Many elements of it reflect the recommendations from our 2024 report, Security and Prosperity. Now for my remarks. As you know, Canada is facing a lot of headwinds. Productivity challenges and low levels of business investment persist, and we've lost global market share in many important resources, including critical minerals. At the same time, we know this is a world poised for growth. Rising populations and the rapid growth of the global middle class are creating strong demands for energy and resources, while national security and clean energy applications are driving global demand for critical minerals. Canada has much to offer, and we know that our allies and trading partners are looking for stable suppliers. But being rich in resources is one thing. We need structural changes to translate our trade ambitions into action. This is why the Council wrote Selling to Our Strengths last year, which is a roadmap for leveraging Canada's resources at a time of global uncertainty. Our report calls for a whole-of-government approach to unlock Canada's immense potential and to position the country as a reliable supplier of energy and critical minerals. In an era where the weaponization of resources and supply chains is becoming more commonplace, Canada should seize the moment to trade more with its allies who prioritize national security and responsible resource development. Our view is that Canada can be a primary supplier of critical minerals to NATO allies. Risks to mineral supply chains are increasing due to foreign price manipulation, export controls, rising military demands, and limited inventories. NATO partners are currently over-reliant on China's market dominance and powerful ability to exert export controls over inputs necessary for national defense purposes. As geopolitical tensions escalate, NATO members require a concerted strategy to secure their supply of critical minerals for national security. Canada is home to 12 of the critical minerals listed by NATO, and 10 of the 12 are produced and refined within our country. Canada's mastery of sustainable mining production and finance, stable governance structure, and understanding of global markets can position it as an important supplier to NATO allies. As a founding signatory to NATO, we argue that the Canadian government, in cooperation with the private sector, should create a critical mineral reserve for niche metals vital to defense purposes and where there's fragility in supply and market mechanisms. While Canada holds promise and potential, much work remains to be done to overcome the challenges it faces to develop its resources and to move them to market. I offer 3 recommendations for consideration. First is that we require a new vision for how we move our goods to market. 60% of Canada's GDP is reliant on trade, but investments in infrastructure on a per capita basis in Canada lag those of our peer countries like Australia and Sweden. We require a national trade infrastructure strategy that brings together all levels of government and the private sector so that we can turn our trade ambition into action through higher levels of investment. But we also need to ensure that our supply chains remain responsive to the needs of our customers, those we have today and those that we want in the future. Case in point, Canada experienced 62 work stoppages in the transportation sector alone in 2023 and 2024, involving close to 20,000 workers. Another important point is that Canada is amongst the worst in the OECD in days lost due to labor disruptions. These are difficult stats to come to grips with a world that expects to receive our goods in a timely and reliable manner. We also need to ramp up our ability to identify, approve, and produce critical mineral projects. Canada is home to the workers, businesses, and communities that know how to explore, extract, and process critical minerals at scale. We are encouraged at the moment to see governments across the country come together to develop mutual recognition agreements that advance resource and mining projects through one project and one assessment. but our challenges remain significant. Canada has the third longest lead time in the world for mining projects, according to a recent report released by S&P Global. Smelting and refining are essential for supply chain resilience and independence, but many of our approval processes preempt new builds or even expansions and upgrades. Canada's private sector also faces unfair competition from foreign producers that benefit from an intentional, state-directed policy of overcapacity and oversupply, as well as a lack of rigorous labor and environmental standards. In our view, a project deemed to be essential to Canada and its allies' national security interests should benefit from regulatory excellence, including streamlined approval and permitting. My third point is about the importance of seizing the moment to unlock Canadian innovation. Leveraging our critical minerals and resources can create generational opportunity to drive technological progress and go beyond exporting raw and unprocessed commodities. But Canada's innovation policy requires a shot in the arm. Our investments in research and development are amongst the lowest in the OECD, and our research often falls short of commercialization. Another case in point is that we only have less than 1.5% of global patent filings. In the mining sector alone, our patents hover at around 2%, whereas China owns the market at more than 70%. We're pleased to see Borealis referenced in Canada's industrial strategy, and it looks like it's poised to be a central piece of the strategy's future success. Therefore, we encourage the government to assure that its work also focuses on critical minerals. In my closing remarks, I would just like to quote the CEO of Teck, Jonathan Price, who offered sage advice when he spoke to an event in Ottawa earlier this month. I quote, he said, "Time is short, and the actions we take over the next 5 years will set the trajectory for the next 50. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Gaulin, you have up to 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you very much for the invitation to speak with you here today. My name is Jeff Gaulin. I'm with Vale Base Metals. I want to start with a simple proposition. You cannot defend your country without critical minerals. Not your borders, not your environment, not your economy. National security begins with supply chains, which countries control them, and whether they can stand up under pressure. Critical minerals are certainly an economic advantage for Canada. They attract investment, they create jobs, spur regional development, but they also accelerate the energy transition and they enable trade optionality. Today, critical minerals are a national strategic asset. So I'll make 3 points today. 1, Canadian critical minerals are indispensable to the Canadian Armed Forces, NORAD, and NATO. 2, nickel, copper, and cobalt are mission critical to Arctic sovereignty. And 3, Canada must move with greater urgency to extract more minerals out of the ground from existing brownfield mines. With an expanded tax credit today, we could be producing and processing more minerals tomorrow. At Vale Base Metals, our mission is to provide mineral security to a world in transition. We've done that from Canada for more than a century. Today, we employ more than 7,000 people in North America's only mine-to-refinery ecosystem. Our teams explore, mine, process, and refine copper, nickel, and cobalt from 8 mines and 3 refineries, from Labrador to northern Manitoba. Last year alone in Canada, we produced 89,000 tons of copper, 80,000 tons of nickel, and more than 3,000 tons of cobalt. These 3 minerals are designated as national security priorities under Canada's Defence Production Act, and for good reason. They are foundational to economic strength, industrial resilience, and national defense. And that's my first point. Canadian critical minerals are indispensable to the Canadian Armed Forces, NORAD, and NATO. No advanced military capability exists without secure access to critical minerals. These materials are not interchangeable. They are embedded in platforms that can last up to 40 years, and they are required for NATO interoperability. Canada produces or refines 10 of the 12 minerals NATO considers defense critical. And Canada is the leading supplier of Class 1 military-grade nickel to the United States. In practical terms, Canada is the only country that can reliably supply both the CAF and NATO, both nickel and cobalt, through mining to refining inside a trusted, geopolitically aligned jurisdiction. My second point, nickel, copper, and cobalt are mission critical to Canada's Arctic sovereignty. Icebreakers, drones, AI systems in the north, items pushed to their limits under extreme cold, corrosion, remoteness. These depend on critical minerals. Copper enables AI to exist in the Arctic. Nickel allows it to survive. Cobalt allows it to persist. These minerals are Arctic mission enablers. Without them, Canada's ability to defend itself in the Arctic, as well as meeting NORAD and NATO commitments, is weakened. Furthermore, northern mining operations offer the potential for dual-use infrastructure. Roads, ports, airstrips, remote energy systems, people. Our Voisey's Bay mine in northern Labrador has a deep-water port that could be expanded to support naval operations. And a new, longer airstrip could both improve the productivity of that mine and serve as a forward asset for the Canadian Armed Forces. As Canada strengthens its defense infrastructure, such partnerships could open up new exploration while leveraging existing mines. Northern mining infrastructure is security infrastructure. And my final point, Canada must move with greater urgency to get critical minerals out of the ground. Having minerals in the ground does not secure our future. Only producing them does. Everything else flows from that: refining, manufacturing, trade, security. I have 3 long-term policy considerations for Canada and for the committee to consider, but let me leave you with this. Despite Canada's extraordinary polymetallic endowment, we are not extracting enough minerals today to keep our refineries competitive. Valley Base Metals mined 80,000 tons of nickel last year, and yet we still had to import 16,000 tons to make our refineries operate efficiently. Think on that. We had to import nickel to Sudbury, home to the second largest nickel sulfide deposit in the world. We have been mining in Sudbury for more than 100 years, and we have 100 years to go. We're going to run out of miners before we run out of minerals. And with innovative new processing, we can extract more minerals from our waste rock as well as our tailings. Simply put, there is more value and more security to extract from today's mines. Expanding the investment tax credits to include mine development expenses for brownfield mines would be the fastest and most capital-efficient way to increase mineral output from existing mines, leveraging workers, infrastructure, and equipment already in place. This is not about subsidies, it is about speed. And in the current global security environment, speed matters, because we are already a generation behind, and we do not have a generation to wait. Thank you.